Greetings, everyone. So today I want to discuss something that Pope Francis said in an interview. This was the video I was originally going to make a few days ago, and then I decided to make one on the German bishop madness. This was an interview that the Pope did on the 10th of March, and he was asked about priestly celibacy. So first, I just want to go through this article explaining what the Pope said on this issue, and then I want to give my opinion on priestly celibacy, and I'm interested to read your opinions in the comments section, so please do give your thoughts and opinions on this. I want to kind of start a little discussion on this whole thing, and I'm curious to see what you think about it, dear viewers. So first of all, let's have a little look at the article. So it says, Pope Francis discusses revising priestly celibacy in new interview. In a new interview, Pope Francis has discussed the possibility of revising the Western discipline of priestly celibacy. There is no contradiction for a priest to marry. Celibacy in the Western Church is a temporary prescription. I do not know if it is settled in one way or another, but it is temporary in this sense, Pope Francis said in an interview published on March the 10th. It is not eternal like priestly ordination, which is forever, whether you like it or not. Whether you leave or not is another matter, but it is forever. On the other hand, celibacy is a discipline. When asked by the Argentine journalist Daniel Haddad if celibacy could be reviewed, Pope Francis responded, yes. In fact, everyone in the Eastern Church is married, or those who want to. There they make a choice. Before ordination, there is the choice to marry or to be celibate. And that's according to a transcript provided by Info by, or however you pronounce that. In response to the interviewer's inquiry if the Pope thought that making celibacy optional would lead more people to join the priesthood, Pope Francis said, I do not think so, noting that there are already married priests in the Catholic Church in the Eastern Rites. I agree with him, by the way. I don't think it would mean more people would join the priesthood, but I'll comment on that in a few moments. The Pope added that earlier that day he had met with an Eastern Catholic priest who has a wife and a son. Pope Francis has spoken about the value of priestly celibacy before. In January 2019, he said, personally, I think that celibacy is a gift to the Church. I would say that I do not agree with allowing optional celibacy. No. So it seems 4 years ago he was against getting rid of celibacy, or at least making it optional. And now he's saying, oh, yes, of course, absolutely. You know, this is just a temporary discipline. So that's interesting. The Pope added at the time that he thinks there is room to consider some exceptions for married clergy in the Latin Rite when there is a pastoral necessity in remote locations due to a lack of priests, such as in the Pacific Islands. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. I already think it's a bad idea that some priests now in the Western Catholic Church can be married and others cannot. Because if you become a Catholic priest in the Western Church and you were already a priest who was married in another denomination, you can keep your wife and kids, and I just think that's going to cause jealousy and other issues, but again, I'll mention that in a moment. The nearly 1 hour long interview published Friday with Info B, or however you say that, a Miami-based Spanish language online news outlet, also touched on Daniel Ortega's dictatorship in Nicaragua, drug trafficking in Latin America, the war in Ukraine, and marriage annulments, excuse me. Okay, so that's pretty much all on the celibacy issue. Now, I think it's a bad idea to get rid of celibacy. I know that celibacy in the Western Catholic Church hasn't always been around. It's been around for about 900 years now. I think it was the 12th century when it came into force. And I'm also aware that other Christian denominations do allow for married priests. I think pretty much probably all of them. But then you might say, well, who cares about them? They're not in communion with Rome. They do all kinds of things that are incorrect. But then, of course, we know that Eastern Catholic churches that are in communion with Rome do permit married priests. So it seems, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that the Western Catholic Church, the Latin Catholic Church, is the only one that doesn't permit priests to marry. And I think that that's a good thing. I don't think priests should marry. Let me bring you this quote from the Bible, because I was looking around online and I was noticing there were a lot of Protestant Christians who were slamming the Catholic Church for even having such a rule, saying that it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that you can't get married if you're a priest. And in fact, God says, go forth and multiply. So what are they doing? It's all about just making sure priests can't accumulate any wealth. There are actually indicators in the Bible that would suggest that it's a very good idea for priests not to marry. Here's one such quote from Corinthians. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 7. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. So, basically put, if you are a priest who is married, you do have to take care of your wife. You do have to take care of your children. You're going to be thinking about that. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't worship God, and married men and women do worship God, but you've always got one eye on making sure that your family is taken care of. I actually interviewed just recently Father Jason Sharon, who is an Eastern Catholic priest, a Ukrainian Catholic priest. And that's one thing I didn't ask him that I want to ask him, because I know that he has a wife and I think he has 7 children. And I just wanted to ask him how that works, but maybe I just kind of didn't have the guts to do it. Maybe I'll ask him some other time. That's a big family he has. How does he take care of them? Where does the money come from so he can take care of his wife and children? Does he just take a portion of what's donated to the church? Does he get some kind of allowance from the church that's for his family? Is he doing other things to make money? Writing books or something? I don't know. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that all those children are taken care of? So we have that issue. Now, the Pope rightly said in that interview that he didn't think permitting married priests would bring more men to the priesthood. And I think that's also true. The Anglican Church is a fantastic example of that. Married priests have not brought more people into the Anglican Church to become priests. And also, relaxing the rules in the Anglican Church hasn't made more people become Anglican or return to Anglicanism. So just a general rule of thumb, relaxing rules in the church for the laity does not bring more people into the church. Allowing priests to get married does not bring about more vocations. Now, I also mentioned earlier while reading the article that I'm against what's happening now already in the Catholic Church. I don't think it's a good idea that priests who were in another Christian denomination and were married and had children can come over to the Catholic Church and be priests. Now, I know that, as far as I'm aware, there's a certain level they can't go above, like they can't be bishops or cardinals or the Pope. They have to remain priests. But I still think that poses a problem for priests who are, sacrificing a lot to become priests, basically, sacrificing their family. And then seeing another priest who just comes over, he has a wife, has children, and thinking, oh, okay. So we're not really quite both making the same sacrifice, are we? And actually, sacrifice is another thing that I think is so wonderful about the Catholic priesthood, that when you see your priest, you know that he has sacrificed or offered to God celibacy. He said, I'm sacrificing having a wife, having children for you. I want to put all my attention on you. And that shows strength, I would say, to other men. And I know that in these times, for example, men really struggle to keep to the rule that, look, you shouldn't be fornicating. You should be waiting until you meet the right woman and you marry her, and then you can have a family with her and have children. And when a man is struggling with that and he sees the priest and thinks, well, look at this guy. He's given it up for his whole life, having children with any woman. He's offered that to God, and he's able to do it. So I can do this. I can hold out until I get married, until I meet the right woman and marry her. So it's another great example that these priests give. And again, I know that people can argue and say, well, priests can also give a good example of being married, being good husbands and being good fathers, and that's an example for their parishioners. It can be, I suppose, unless, of course, that priest is struggling and you find out that he hasn't got a good relationship with his wife and that, you know, one of his children is doing drugs and another one is doing something else terrible. And then you think, oh, but here he is telling us this is the right way to do things when he can't do it himself. And I am aware that there are some priests who also haven't been faithful to celibacy. It's a very, very tiny portion of them, a very tiny minority of them. They are not the standard. But yes, some priests fail. But you look to the ones that don't, and the majority of them do not fail. The majority of them do keep their priestly celibacy, and they're, you know, very good, strong figures who you can look up to. And I just think that's a great example to follow. They are spiritual fathers. You can either be a physical father, have a family, or if you're a priest, you're a spiritual father. So, yes, I think it would be a very bad idea if the Catholic Church got rid of priestly celibacy. As I said, I think they've already done a bad move by letting some priests be married, those who move over from another denomination of Christianity. I also thought this idea that the Pope seemed to put out there about allowing some priests in some areas where maybe there's a shortage to be married. No, again, one rule for some and another rule for others, it's not a good idea at all, I don't think. So that's why I'm against, generally, priests being permitted to marry. And I think that the Latin Church got it right 900 years ago when they put in the rule of celibacy. I think it's an amazing thing when a priest vows celibacy and obedience, and in some cases poverty as well. So please do keep it that way. Please don't make any changes, Pope Francis. A few years ago, you said you were very much against any changes to the rule of celibacy, and now you're suddenly saying, well, maybe it's fine. Yeah, this is just a temporary fix, if you like, a temporary 900-year fix. But please do give your thoughts. I'm interested to see what you think about this. Do you agree with me that celibacy is a good thing in the priesthood and should be kept, or do you think that it's something that's just far too difficult to manage and that priests should be permitted to marry? Do you also think that it's going to bring more people to the priesthood if such a rule is implemented? Do let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, folks, and please do return soon.